Hi, I'm Joe Quirk. Welcome to the Blue Frontiers podcast about all my favorite things: seasteading, the environment, special economic zones, and innovation in science, technology, governance, and society itself. Now, here's your host, the Seavangelesse, Nathalie Mezza-Garcia.
Hello, Seasteaders. I am here with Rob Viglione. He's the co-founder of ZenCash, which is a fork of Zcash, which is a fork of Bitcoin. So technically, Rob, ZenCash is the more private, more secure, and more decentralized grandson of Bitcoin, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, we're trying to abide by Satoshi's original vision, right? Keeping it decentralized and private.
I understand. How are you trying to make that, or how are you making it?
Well, I think we've already made it. But it's definitely a work in progress. And I think definitely the cool stuff that I think would be relevant for the seasteaders is, the technology is distributed for sure. The technology is super private. We have the cryptography for that on multiple levels. But what I think is most interesting is the governance stuff that we're doing, which I think is very symbiotic. And we're actually trying to build out a legit liquid democracy to decentralize decision-making.
Yeah, I saw that you have partnership with IOHK to create a voting system where individuals will be able to vote and actually get paid to vote, or to their vote in someone if they don't want to make their decision. And also a really important component is that you wouldn't show which is the most favorable option so that it doesn't tribalize, like Randy calls it.
Yeah, you nailed it. No, you totally nailed it. That's actually, you described our voting system better than I ever could. So that was perfect, actually. We're leveraging our cryptography, which is kind of the cool stuff about our tech. And we're going to do secret balloting because we know from game theory and just real world politics that tribalism and the voting mechanism itself could influence the outcome of elections. And that's what we don't want, right? We want everyone in the world who submits a proposal to do something to have an equal chance at it being accepted or, rejected if people don't like it. But we want at least the community to see the proposals and have everyone has equal access, right? And you can't do that, honestly, without a secret balloting mechanism. But then what you also mentioned with the economics, if you don't get the economics right, none of this stuff will be sustainable, right? We can talk about ideals all day long, and you and I both have, I think, great ideals for what we're doing here, but not everyone in the world will share our values and want to do, the right thing for this kind of system. So you have to align the economics to work out right. And that's what we're doing. The simplest way to overcome voter apathy is you pay people to vote, right? And then for liquid democracy, it's really important to have the ability to delegate your vote because, we all have lives and there's no way that we're all going to just be professional voters. But now what we can do is we can have a system that actually rewards professional voters that the community trusts. And you can delegate your voting stake to them. And then you split the economics. So the person that you delegate to gets paid. You still get paid by delegating your stake, right? So it's like a win-win-win scenario.
You have mentioned the word professionalization in several occasions.
Yes.
Professionalization of the future of blockchain.
Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by Cheers?
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, cheers. Yeah.
What do you mean by professionalization?
Yeah. So this industry was started basically by cypherpunks who wanted to make a social change, in 2008 and 2009. And it's gone through a whirlwind since then, right? Initially, we had then everyone was jumping on board to try to improve Bitcoin, expand Bitcoin, and that was awesome. And then people started coming up with different ideas where they said, okay, well, we can tweak things a little bit. We can change a parameter here. We can try different technology there. And that was really cool. We saw a bit of an explosion of different projects. And what we've had basically in the last year or so is we had a lot of professionals entering the space. Not to say that there weren't professionals before, but it was more like people were just contributing on their own, donating time, donating resources. Everything was kind of traditional open source. But now, in particular, what we're doing is we actually, we want to hybridize the model, right? I think that Not everything has to be completely voluntary. It's good sometimes to pay people to do things. Right? I mean, people have to pay their bills. They have families, right? So what we realized there was a whole set of professionals just sitting on the sideline and just watching because they have families. They have bills to pay. They can't just come on and volunteer for free to do everything. So what we're seeing now is, like, for instance, our team, we have 50 or so people on the team. We have multiple partnerships. We have, engineering teams that we work with around the world, like IOHK, InfoPulse. We have our own engineering teams. And we're bringing in professionalization to the industry. And not just us, there's other projects out there as well. But when you see, like, we're organized into 7 professional divisions, right? We've got our engineering stuff. Even within engineering, we have subdivisions or departments, for like infrastructure, software development, QA testing. Then we have our user support division, that does customer support,
which is
design, getting feedback metrics, community and usage. Yeah, I mean, the kind of stuff that you would expect from any professional organization. We do business development professionally. We have marketing and multiple levels of marketing, not multi-level marketing, but like multiple divisions or departments within marketing, right? We do quantitative marketing. We do like design and creative marketing. So we have a professional financial management of our reserves. We have an accounting system in place. So it's the kind of thing where if you don't have this stuff and you rewound back to like 2014, when you have maybe the projects were comprised of maybe a dozen or so enthusiasts who kind of forked a GitHub repo and just went with it themselves, I just don't see how they can compete in the modern cryptocurrency space.
Wow, I understand. I understand. You bring to the space a very interesting vision, because not only you're in industry, but you also have the critical perspective of academia.
Oh, yeah. Well, spoken from a fellow academic, right? I think so. The best thing that academia has taught me is to just be skeptical of everything and treat everything like a scientist. So every opinion that you have, and here's the key thing, is we all have a lot of opinions, right? But you treat your opinion like a hypothesis, and you're actually open to getting data and testing it and seeing how things are, and like to being mature to say, maybe my hypothesis was wrong, right? And that's something where I'm very grateful to have gone through academia, to get me to think this way. And it's a unique way of thinking, really.
Yeah, definitely you get a more depth knowledge by looking to the different sides of each phenomenon.
Exactly. And being humble enough to realize that we're all going to make mistakes. We're going to be wrong many, many times in our lives, right? The key is to make many small mistakes and, be quick about learning from them.
Exactly. Although paradoxically, science and academia are still very biased, because for example, when it comes to scientific or medical trials, the results that are published on journals are positive results.
Yep, so, absolutely.
Yeah, in order to overcome that, now there are some journals like the Journal of Negative Results, where results that are not so significant but important enough for science to say, hey, this didn't work, get published.
No, I totally agree with you. That's one bias. The other bias is just the human aspect, where individuals are biased and have their own conflicts of interest. And we see this in this industry is you have finance and banking and economics professionals who hate what we're doing. They absolutely hate it. And they just say it's the stupidest thing in the world. But then if you think about the conflict of interest, and maybe there's some very legitimate criticisms, which I completely agree with. But you also have to think that some of these guys, they have 40 years of experience in traditional banking and economics. And what we're doing is disrupting everything that they've worked on in their lives. So of course they're going to be not very happy with what we're doing, right? But I just wish they were a little bit more honest about that. You can give the criticisms, but give your criticisms as if they're hypotheses, and let's figure it out. But some of these guys are just completely black and white, and they refuse to look at what we're doing. But the reality is they're just going to be obsolete if they do that.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely see that. It's the same thing that has happened in complexity. So the field where I am, which is complexity science, is treated sometimes as an anomaly or as like an alternative, but complexity prevails most
everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the rejection of complexity in favor of traditional models, and in my field specifically governance, traditional models of decision making, is simply a limitation that will make people obsolete. Because Rob, it's here to stay. Like blockchain here to stay. Seasteading is here to stay. There's nothing to do.
I totally agree with you.
There's
yeah, and I would say cheers to that.
Yes, yes.
There we go.
I've been reading a lot about ZenCash lately and watching a lot of your videos, and I saw that in pretty much in all your talks, you mentioned seasteading.
Of course. It's one of my favorite projects. So yeah, I mean, I think that what we're doing, so with ZenCash, we're hoping to build a virtual nation, right? That's really ultimately what we're doing.
Wow.
A virtual society. We're focusing on the economics and the privacy, the communication. But what you guys are doing on seasteading, and like I'm so happy to be part of this project as well, is it's taking this to the next level in the real world where, okay, that's cool. You guys are doing some great stuff with software, but how about we do it in the real world with hardware? So I'm really excited, and I can't talk enough about seasteading and how I think that, this is the future for sure, and like I said in Zurich, when I was hanging out with you guys at that meetup was, it sounds crazy to some people in the world right now. And this is my prediction is you talk about seasteading and they think it's just absolutely crazy. And we struggle really hard to get the first seastead, right? And then we still struggle for the second and third seastead. But then we have 1,000 seasteads like right away from there because it just explodes and people realize, of course, this is the way to go. Of course, there's a massive opportunity here to make the world better, to help societies that are kind of impoverished, to help the environment. And so many levels, I think that we're doing the right thing. And I think if you have a values-driven project where you are actually consistent with your values and trying to make life better and the world better, you're going to succeed, right? It's just a matter of time.
That is so true. After you left Zurich a few weeks ago, so we were hanging out, you, Igor, the co-founder, Igor, Randy, who's also a co-founder, Nick, also co-founder, some friends. And after you left, because you left first, you must remember, Randy was really happy because he was with you in Dubai. He went to you with Liechtenstein, so you were in different places, and each other got the chance to see each other presenting in several locations. And Randy was really happy to realize like how much your values and the values of ZenCash align with those values of seasteading.
Yeah, of course. Likewise. But I mean, I knew that all along because, I've been following seasteading since I think 2014 when I joined as an ambassador, or before that following it. But then, actually joining as an ambassador was like, awesome for me. I've always wanted to support this project and I always will.
Wow. How did you find out that the signature of the Memorandum of Understanding with the government of French Polynesia? How did you find out that? Do you remember the moment?
Oh, I was shocked in such a good way. I mean, it's amazing. So that was just when I first heard about it. But then when I actually went to Tahiti and started meeting people involved in the project and people in the community there, it just made even more sense. And like I was so happy with this direction. I still am, and I really hope that this first seastead in the lagoon in Tahiti is a huge success. Not just for us and the project, but also for the people of Tahiti and French Polynesia. I think it's a great opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. What uses do you see for blockchain on seasteads?
Well, so many things, of course. I mean, so the things.
For 1 hour, please.
Okay, I'll condense it. Well, currency for sure, right? It's just easy to transact in cryptocurrency. Once you're into cryptocurrency and you just make this part of your life, you don't want to go back to traditional banking. At least that's how I feel. When I went into cryptocurrency, into Bitcoin, I started just migrating my life into Bitcoin. Whenever I have to deal with banks, it's just painful, right? Yeah, it's painful. So especially as we're building new societies, we have a chance to build from scratch. And why would we use the 1960s legacy banking system? It just doesn't make sense, right? We should use the modern financial products that we have with cryptocurrencies, and life is so much better. But then there's the governance stuff. So on blockchain, we can do distributed identification, so like ID systems where people can prove who they are and then retain this privately or selectively disclose to anyone they want. Here's who I am. You can learn anything you want about my background that I choose to disclose to you, right? So now we can kind of push the whole identity management stuff peer-to-peer instead of having these big like central repositories or governments that manage everything. And then this is amazing for like citizen registration on a seastead. So everything could be voluntary based. It could be decentralized, peer-to-peer, proving who you are, using your identity for a whole range of services. We could use this to collect revenue to do things like public utilities, whatever we choose to do on these things. We could link this to a blockchain in a provably fair and mutable way. We could do records management. We could do voting systems now where how do we collectively and voluntarily make decisions with each other peacefully, right? And this is something that even the technology we're building on ZenCash is we hope to be the most advanced blockchain-based voting system in the world. And we constantly want to keep improving it. And right now, I think that this is one example of, well, hey, use a voting system to make decisions on seasteads. So there's so much that can happen between blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and seasteads.
You touched several points of things I wanted to ask you. So I'll go in order. First, you mentioned that since you migrated your life to crypto, you haven't want to go back.
Yes.
Like once you go crypto, you don't go back.
Exactly.
So you actually did the first ever Bitcoin transaction in Afghanistan.
Yes. Oh, you found out about that. Well, we think it was.
I'm a researcher.
Yeah, I bought a cigar. No, I bought a cigar from my friend out there for 0.1 of a Bitcoin, which is like way too expensive now. At the time, it was like $10. Now it's way, $900 for that cigar.
Oh my cosmos. Okay, you can say it was a Cuban cigar.
Not even. Not even.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Well, you have a nice story.
Yeah. And hey, my government here doesn't like me smoking Cuban cigars for some like insane reason. So I'm forbidden from smoking Cuban cigars as an American.
Cuban cigars?
No, it's crazy. They really care about what tobacco we smoke, I guess.
Like if they care about what tobacco you smoke, they should care about not smoking at all.
To be consistent, right?
Exactly, but that doesn't make any sense. Why does a government need to have a say in what you put in your body?
Well, because they're trying to hurt the Cuban people by not allowing us to use any of their products. It's a really bad, unethical, and like stupid embargo policy that our government still maintains partially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sucks for the Cuban people. I think that's something we need to be honest about. It
is.
Yeah, it's insane, and it's unacceptable. It's unethical.
It really is. But I really like that Cubans have just such a beautiful magic in them that is like, okay, you have this embargo for us for like 50, 70, I don't know how many years. Well, we are anyway going to be the happiest people in the planet.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree.
So it's a magic place. You have this happiness.
Yeah. And this goes to seasteadings. I can't wait for a future where we go like beyond politics and we stop with these stupid political like frictions and, hurting other people because of political ideologies. This stuff has to stop. And I think the key difference, like what will absolutely change everything, the number one key difference, the right to exit.
Yes!
So the right to exit, right? So, and this is what happens with seasteads, right? You create a society where they're modular. You can come together if you like what's going on. You can leave if you don't like it. So no longer are we just stuck in one geographic location where you have to either convince or beat into submission everyone else to get your idea passed. Now we can just say, well, hey, I have a cool idea. What do you guys think? Follow me if you like it. Ignore me if you don't, instead of, hey, you must obey me.
Exactly. That is really stupid. So you have mentioned how decentralization is key for security.
Yeah.
And linking this to what you've just said, do you think that as we decentralize governance by creating more seasteads and micronations or different types of startup societies, we are heading towards a world that is where the global order is more secure or safe? Or
I hope so. I think that this is an awesome kind of like conversation topic. I really think it's amazing because I think that there's always trade-offs. So with centralization, you get more efficiency. In general, at least with a lot of the systems we have, and maybe we could prove this wrong in the future. But I think there's a reason why nation states exist. I think they were more efficient at resource allocation. So if you have a nation state and they have the right to use force to collect all these resources against your will, if you don't like it, they can do it. And you can't stop them. And they could use all of these resources to maintain order. They could use these resources to invade the neighbor. Right? Yeah, exactly. And we don't have a choice, so we don't see the alternative.
Yeah.
But I think that it actually leads to instability in the long term. And we see this where, yes, we have decades of kind of quasi-stability, but then we also have every few decades a major world war where 100 million people get slaughtered, right? So you have to account for this stuff in the statistics. You can't ignore the major instances where nation states have gone batshit crazy and started butchering huge civilization, parts of civilization. So I really hope that by diffusing power and having decentralized governance, we can overcome this kind of like massive accumulation that, okay, a massive accumulation of power could be used for good, but it is very often used for harm, and guarantee that at some point in history, you're going to have both. So is it worth, are these periods of, supposed good that we're told can only exist with a nation state, is this worth the infrequent but absolutely insane outbreaks of industrial scale violence? I don't know. I would actually say my personal choice is no, absolutely not. I would rather see things decentralized. But at a minimum, hey, we now have a chance to show the world whether or not this is going to work. And hey, there's also, yeah, exactly. Another part of reality and being a scientist is we can say, this hypothesis I think will work within this range. And maybe it doesn't work outside of that range. So maybe, people say, hey, communism's great in your family, right? We can share resources as a family, but it doesn't work very well at a nation state scale. And there's probably some reality as well of maybe decentralized governance systems work well up into a few thousand people or tens of thousands of people, who knows? But we'll find out with Seasteads, and that's the beautiful thing. Maybe it works for all of humanity. We'll find out. If it works, we expand, and if it doesn't, we kind of go to the scale that makes sense.
Yeah, the only important part is that you don't have a model that applies to everything, because that is not possible.
Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly right. And, I think this is, human beings have this bias, and especially academics have this bias, academics love problems that are kind of like complex, but tractable, right? So like, we like things that are kind of intellectually challenging, but still tractable so we can see the solution. But oftentimes, and especially maybe for you, this doesn't hold because you study complexity theory. Reality is complex, and our human brains just aren't going to understand everything a priori, right? So trying to organize the world and all of these complex social systems ex ante doesn't make sense. It's not going to work, right? But then the other bias that people have is we like really simple mental models. And human beings are amazing at boiling down a super complex universe into little things that we can understand. Even our vision is designed to kind of boil down all this input that we get into, like, I'm looking at Nathalie right now. I see this image of Nathalie, but the reality is you're a huge, well, I actually said this to Igor, I think, in Zurich, where I was like, hey, you're mostly empty space. I wasn't trying to say his brain is empty space. It was just, our molecules are mostly empty space the way our atoms are constructed together, right? So that's the reality. But the human brain is amazing at distilling this complex pattern into something simple that we can understand. And that's the way we use our brains. We like really simple models to explain the world, like the black and white terms, but the reality is not black and white. So why should we ever think about social models for governance or how society should be organized in really simple terms like capitalism versus communism or socialism or these other isms? Like, drop the isms. Like, let's get real. Like, leave the 20th century behind us and let's move forward and like think about like how we just help each other out and make a better world without all these stupid ideologies.
I love it. Yeah. I heart it.
Yeah, exactly. I heart it as well.
Yeah. Do you so basically you this decentralization is not only at the core of ZenCash, but it's also at the core of your PhD subject.
It is, yeah.
I saw that you were speaking about how you were looking at Lorentz curves to understand inequalities and
Yes.
how decentralized Bitcoin was, and you realized, hey, this is not so much, we need to do something about it.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we extrapolate this to governance, yeah, and I'm going to speak like such an academic here. Assuming,
Please.
Assuming that we can extrapolate what we spoke about ZenCash Uberizing finances and Seasteading Uberizing governance, what role does inequality plays there?
I think a huge role. So I think if we talk about like values that dominate other values, I personally think that, of course, egalitarianism dominates like dictatorship. Right? If we can say, can everyone have equal access to a whole range of things that are important? Does everyone have kind of a say or a voice in how their lives operate or how society should be, organized? So I think that it's really important. In seasteading, you're probably going to go through the same growing pains that we do. Is you realize sometimes things aren't always perfectly equal, and some people, and this is a function of who we are as human beings as well. Not everyone, first of all, not everyone has the same latent talent for everything, right? So you're probably a much better musician than I am, and maybe I'm better at something. I don't know. We'll find out one day, right? But there's no reason to assume that we should both be equal at everything, right? So of course, outcomes in life aren't going to be exactly homogenous because we all have different latent skill sets, different ambitions, goals, different effort levels that we put into things. And then of course, a huge overlay of just like risk and luck of outcome, which, and even just luck of birth, right? So ultimately, what we want to do is we want to make the world, like, I think it's good to focus on the key values. Like, we want a peaceful, happy world, right? And how do we get there? We could, it probably doesn't make sense to use violence to try to force these outcomes, because that's kind of right? It doesn't make sense. It's just intuitively insane. But unfortunately, this is what the 20th century was all about, right? So I'm really happy that we're moving beyond that. But I think that as we grow, we have to keep these things in mind, and we don't want to be insensitive. So I'm we'd call like a free market libertarian anarchist who wants just freedom and voluntarism. But at the same time, I acknowledge the reality is that the outcomes of many free systems will look very unequal.
Yes.
And what can we do as individuals to try to counteract this? But as a blockchain guy or cryptocurrency guy, I'm a really big fan of designing incentives to make things work organically in a favorable direction, rather than trying to impose like your will on things to change things kind of forcibly. So the whole Lorentz curve thing, this was our thing in the cryptocurrency world, where we realized if we want to actually be true to our values and decentralize and be fair and equal to people, we have to actually methodically approach this like scientists and break our system into subsystems and make sure that we're intentionally decentralizing each subsystem. And that's what you saw with the Lorentz curves, was we're just measuring the subsystems. And for Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're highly centralized. For every single cryptocurrency project out there that I know about, it's highly centralized. So we're trying to overcome this and try to like methodically change it.
So your ultimate goal, and these are your own words, is to create a system that can maximize the utility function in favor of the whole system, and not just
right. Yeah, exactly. And in economics, this is where I think a lot of economists go wrong, is in a black and white, like mathematically magical world. And you take some utility function and you go ahead and you try to optimize it subject to some constraints. You can come up with some example, like a market for lemons, where you can point to something and say, hey, there's a market failure here. And the market for lemons was the classic example in economics of a market failure, right? But I still think that it's it's kind of disingenuous because it boils all human beings into very representative agents with identical utility functions. And then it assumes that there's this mythical entity called government that's like God, perfect information, no agency issues at all, and can just like magically solve all of our problems. And I think that that's the failure. But what we can do as an industry or as a society is, instead of looking to the government as like some mythical entity to make our lives better, acknowledge the fact that government is human beings, like some subset of human beings that we vest with some asymmetric power to do something. Right. I think that this is a very inefficient way of organizing society. I think we could do it better by looking at mechanism design for social order and actually building into the mechanisms like incentive compatible ways for people to do the right thing, rather than having like an external God like entity called government that we think is all powerful and all knowledgeable and doesn't have their own separate utility functions that they're trying to maximize as politicians, right? So there's a beautiful coalescence here of like economics and political science and game theory in a way where like we can actually do better. Yeah, exactly. We can do better, and we should. We should absolutely do better.
We will do better. Definitely.
Yeah. So, and I think the key thing is let's stop. Let's just make a campaign to stop violence. And this sounds like so intuitive and so obvious. Like, duh, of course, let's stop using violence. But people need to recognize that, hey, if you go vote for someone to go impose some dictatorial will on the population, that's violence. That's violence right there, right? So you delegating violence is still you committing violence. Yeah. So let's cut that shit out, and let's have a voluntary system where we try to make the world better through positive actions and voluntarism and creating better mechanisms and using our brains instead of using guns to make, force people to do things.
Exactly. Yeah, you just touched one of the key lessons of the Second World War, where some soldiers were taken to court, like post-war.
Yeah.
And they said, I was just obeying orders.
Oh, man. Yeah, exactly.
A similar type of delegation. Another thing I wanted to ask you, one of those three things that I hope I don't forget by the end of the podcast. You mentioned the possibility to select what to share. This is the of selective transparency.
Yes. So I think that's the future. No, I think that's the future. Yeah. So what we have with ZenCash, and we inherited this from Zcash, who guys I absolutely love and respect. And they created, actually, and then we leveraged, was the ability to do these completely private types of transactions and types of transactions, or you can do transparent transactions. And by transparent, they mean it's just like Bitcoin. So that's what we have. And we maintained it, and we're expanding on it in different ways because we think they were completely right. And there's 1,000,001 real world use cases where you need transparency. You want to show the world, hey, I'm being an honest person. I'm doing the right thing. Audit my accounting books. I'm not stealing from my shareholders. Or, like what we're doing with our foundation is we want the world to see what we're spending on, because we want to show them, hey, we're not crooks. We're honest guys. We think we're doing the right thing with the way we're spending money. It's benefiting the community is supporting it. And here's all the accounting. You can see it. And this is why selective transparency is huge. Most of the real world economy operates in a transparent environment. Now, there's a whole bunch of real world use cases where you need privacy. You completely need privacy. Like, you don't want to advertise your bank account balance for the world and say, hey, here's how much I'm worth and here's where it is. Come take it from me. You don't want that, right? And you might also not want all of your private details of your life, your birth date, your social security number. Well, we shouldn't have social security numbers to begin with. But, all these other details of your life, you may not want to broadcast publicly, but you still want to retain this data in a useful way that you could disclose when it's important to disclose it. So that's where we're heading. Well, that's where we are. And we're expanding on this in a bunch of different ways that I think will be useful economically and socially.
I can see. I know that you're doing it because I was doing some research, and something that I really like that I found was that you have a public Trello. Your roadmap in Trello, and it's public and it's there, and you can even see the conversations that you have with your team members. Like, hey, can we have this for Monday? I don't remember. And most about that Trello roadmap was background.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give credit where credit's due. There's an awesome guy named Carlo Vicari, who
Okay.
is helping us out initially. And he came from Ethereum Classic community. And he suggested, hey, you guys have to have a public Trello board. And at first, this is the way I operate. I just want to do everything that right now is right in front of my face. And sometimes like I don't step back and think bigger picture, which, I try to stop myself from. And I was like, okay, well, that's extra work. We'll think about that sometime. And then we held off a couple months, and then we realized, well, we really need to show the community what we're doing and like give the visibility and the transparency that we talk about. So we finally set it up, got off of our butts, and Carlo was completely right. It was the best thing that we did for transparency. So I love it. I think the community loves it. And it's really cool where you can see everything we're working on.
Yes.
And of course, it's not 100% complete. Sometimes, yeah. Well, no, not even. I'd say it's transparency by like, okay, here's actually a big thing that I realize is there's a huge difference between talking about ideals. And you can talk about ideals and be consistent all day long, and that's amazing. Yeah. But then actually going out and doing the work every single day after day after day and be consistent is much harder. So there's a lot of things that we've been doing where it's like we have the best of intentions, but then we get pulled in a million different directions. And, sometimes we run out of resources where like, okay, we want to, even for instance, we want a completely open forum where anyone in the world can come and post a proposal to do something to support the project. And this is something that's really important to us. And we keep saying how important it is, but then like monitoring the forum 365 days a year gets hard. And when you're pulled in a million different directions, sometimes you forget about things, and it sucks where we've been really slow to respond to some things that were awesome ideas. And I was so happy when I saw it. I'm like, wow, this community is awesome. I love how they came forward with this stuff. So now what we do is we realize, okay, we were making a mistake. We were doing this unprofessional. So now we're like, let's professionalize and actually, assign a couple people to monitor the forum and be responsive. So now like we actually have people, this is their job now, because it's really important to always maintain this link with the community where, they can be a part of our project.
Yes, that's true. So when it comes to open source, not open source, a bit open source, but not like, tell me about how do you see the future in terms of open source, not open source, and what is there for businesses?
Have you hacked my computer or something? Because this is like, or my phone, because this is like one of the most relevant conversations we've been having, recently. You're spot on. You nailed it. So this is, I think, personally,
give the credits of that question to someone actually.
Okay.
My friend Tobias in Zurich.
Okay. Oh yes, yeah. Okay, very cool. Yeah.
To him.
Yeah. I remember that conversation. That's true. So here's my personal take: is there's two reasons to do open source. So open source should not be considered a religion, right? It's not. It doesn't make sense to look at the world black and white like that. Open source has two big benefits. One is you have more eyes looking at your code, right? Very clearly. So if you have any bugs in your code, they can be discovered quicker and fixed more quickly. So your code can improve more rapidly and almost like an exponential way with open source. I think this is awesome. It's like magic. But at the same time, it's not exactly magic because, sometimes open source just means you're being copied completely. Sometimes open source means you're posting a vulnerability that, a malicious person finds and exploits before a patch is done. So sometimes open source means you're giving away vulnerabilities before actually having a chance to fix them. So I think though that on average, it's beneficial to be open source. I think, and this also fits with our transparent ideology, right? So it just makes sense on a bunch of different levels. Now let's go to step number 2 is open source also means, we're giving away our technology. So if you think about this we're not just a software project. We are a fully like peer-to-peer ecosystem, like a virtual society that we're trying to build, which is built on software and with software, but it's not just only software. So if you think about what we're doing, we have business development, we have marketing, we have creative people, designers, we have all this cool stuff in a full ecosystem, making this ecosystem more valuable. So these are creating like competitive moats against our, the other projects out there in the world. But at the same time, technology could also be a competitive moat. It's a very valid competitive moat. You build some technology and it's useful. People want to use your products and be part of your ecosystem. If you give it all away, you're giving up your technology as a competitive differentiator, which is fine and valid. But let's just be honest, there's a trade-off here in reality. So vision I see, or the future that I see, is where our core technology is open source, because number one, like, we also want to contribute to society. Like, we want to give technology to society and put it out there in the world so that other people could take it and improve it and apply it in different ways that we're not thinking about or just can't focus on. And that's what Zuko and ZenCash did, was they brought zero knowledge cryptography to this market with a Snark library, and they gave it to the world. And we took that library and then built in a whole bunch of different directions with it. So we want to continue this tradition that started with Satoshi of giving back to the community with technology. But at the same time, I think that there's room for hybrid models here where we can give core technology to the community. But if we build products that are specific to Zen, we can keep, at a minimum, the design work doesn't have to be open source. Like, and the best example here was we open sourced our website, which I think our website's pretty cool. And other projects started copying and pasting our website, like word for word. Whereas, like, holy shit, I'm apparently on some other project. They just changed the name, but I like copied the whole website completely. And like, yeah, cool, that's flattering, but like, does that benefit our community if we give away everything? Because the design of our website is not a core technology that we're giving to the world, right? So did it make sense that we open sourced our website? I don't know. From a security perspective, maybe, but from a business perspective, maybe not, right? So we have to think about here, we're building more than software, we're building a whole community, we're building an ecosystem. So we have to use our brains here and be like, idealistic and pragmatic. So idealistic where it counts, and pragmatic maybe for some of the other things like our design work or maybe some products. So what I want to see is, I want to see, like, we're building a platform, and I want to see a whole bunch of developers building stuff on that platform. And I can guarantee you, not every developer, entrepreneur in the world will want to give it all away for free. Some of them will want to keep it private and just like add it to the ecosystem. And this is where I view us as differentiating in time. Is maybe our infrastructure is completely open, but now the things that people build on the infrastructure, you know, it's their choice if they want to build something that's private or you know, open. And then the community can decide, do they want to use it? Do our node operators want to run it, right? Do our users want to use it, right? So this is the whole voluntary ecosystem that I think is really important. In reality, it's probably somewhere in the middle, like a mixed reality.
Yes.
So.
Yes, a lot of things.
Yeah.
More hybrid than what people give them.
Yeah, exactly. And let it evolve, right?
Most.
Yeah.
You have the whole spectrum. So it doesn't make any sense to just say. I guess that's why your long-term plan is to have multiple decentralized autonomous organizations competing one against the other, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So for us, it's about you know, I think the way evolution works well is the system itself is kind of free to move in whatever direction makes sense, you know, with some optimization functions, right? Now the key is defining what are the functions you're optimizing, and what's the optimum? Are we creating maximums, minimums, something in the middle? Who knows? So what we thought was, okay, we want to evolve as well. We don't ever want to be in a situation where we're static, where we say, hey, you know, Rob and his team are just in charge and this is never going to change. No, that's horrible. We want to create a system where we're just one team of many that's improving the system. And like, we're all just trying to make things better. And we want the community to have a direct say in this. Like, and this is also is important from a legal perspective, is we're not a company with a security, like a stock that we're issuing to the world, because we're not in control of it. It's an open source environment where the community votes directly on how we use resources and the direction that we take. We're just one team that's out there like building on this ecosystem.
Wow. Do you realize that you can just take what you just said, and that what you're talking about is seasteading?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. This is why it makes so much sense for us to work together.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody on Blue Frontiers is really happy that you're an advisor.
Oh yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys, is what I would say. This is completely my pleasure.
No, the pleasure is ours.
No, and one thing I'll say is the Blue Frontiers and Seasteading has just some of the coolest people in the world there, and I want to be neighbors with these people, and that's like one of the big motivations is like just practically, like yeah, we can talk ideology, and I love the ideology, I love the technology experiments, but I just want to be neighbors with you people. So, especially that conference we had in Tahiti last year, where I finally got a chance to meet everyone in person. It's just such a cool group of people.
Can you tell us a bit? Can you tell our listeners about how that conference was? You spoke there.
Oh, it was amazing. For me, it was a big, I would say, game changer, because before it was like, okay, seasteading was something that you kind of keep in the back of your head, and maybe it'll happen one day, maybe it won't, but it's a cool thing to kind of work towards. But then when I saw this conference, it's like, wow, it's actually much further than I thought, and this stuff's it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And there's some amazing and brilliant people who are part of the project. And that for me was actually the big eye opener. It's not just a bunch of crazy people. And actually my wife said this. So my wife said, she's like, yeah, I'm going to Tahiti with you. There's no question about that. I'll go hang out with the crazy people, but I'm going to Tahiti. And then she got there and she hung out and she's like, wow, actually these people are really smart. They're not crazy. Maybe some people are crazy, like she thinks I'm crazy, but she's like, this is actually really cool, and like these are really brilliant people who like mean really well, and like they're creating something that's going to happen. It's going to be impactful to society.
It is. It really
is. Let's be part of it.
And at so many levels, because if you speak of governance, seasteading has a positive impact there. If you speak of economics, also. If you speak about societal, also. If you speak about environmental, also. So.
Social equality, like everything we can think about. Like there's so many things that the project is doing.
Yes.
It's like the perfect, I love win-win-win scenarios where everyone wins. It's like who's going to lose on this? Maybe some politicians that don't want their power taken. I don't know. But when they see like even all of society will be better off, even the politicians long-term will be better off by living in a much more peaceful, stable, wealthier world.
Yeah. I will tell you who will lose. Nation state. Top-down mechanisms of control and forcing people to comply with things they never agreed with.
Yeah.
Why do I have a passport that was arbitrarily given to me just because I was born in a place, and because I was born in this place, then I need to go to this really what's the word? Like when you just, oh my God, like banks. What do banks make you feel? Banks make you feel the same thing that visa processes make you feel. It's so...
You're just a number. You're not a human being. They're in control of you. You have to beg them to approve you and give you that little stamp. Exactly. Right? It's insane. To think that most of humanity has to grovel to some small subset of humanity for permission to do peaceful things like travel across an imaginary line on the ground. I mean, it's insulting, right? It's humiliating. So these are the kinds of things that I think are just very unacceptable that, I hope to see in my lifetime changed, and I hope to be part of the change. The fact that we're having this conversation is we are part of the change, and it'll come. So
what would be your ideal type of community? Because I've read that you think in terms of fairness, equality. What else? I'm missing like 3. What is your ideal type of community?
I mean, and for me personally, I and this is, take this with a grain of salt, because this is just my personal preference set of things that I like. I like people who are just chill, relax, like, what's the word? Accepting of others, right? Not judgmental, humble, not, having to brag about themselves all the time. I like strong characters who don't have to feel like they need to step on others to prove anything.
Like you.
Yeah. Well, no, come on. It's like, humbleness, I think humility is such an important part of being like, enlightenment. I like people that are self-sufficient, but also take care of others, and willing to actually, empathize with other people and put themselves in their shoes. I like people who just challenge things intellectually. So these are just my personal preferences, but of course, to be consistent, I'm completely tolerant of anyone who's willing to peacefully, coexist. I don't want to live next door to someone who blasts their music super loud at 3 a.m, right? Like, I'd like a little bit of privacy and peace, but of course, like, I would love to go party in places like that. So it's not like these things shouldn't exist. I think we all coexist together, and that's going to be the ideal society.
I think that the fact that you and ZenCash are so successful, and at the same time you're so humble and so nice, that sets such a beautiful example. Because
well, thank you for saying that. But I mean, the way I look at it is like we're just getting started, and there's so much more we can do to make the world better. And it's insane to let this stuff get to your head, because the reality is like one, we're extremely lucky to be alive right now in the positions we are. So we shouldn't think that we're so amazing because we've accomplished something, right? We're standing on the shoulders of giants, as always, right? Society's come so far. We don't do this stuff in a vacuum. And for the ZenCash project, it's not me. It's the 50 people we have on the team and the 50,000 people we have in the community who are actually making this successful. Right. So we contribute towards it, but we should never let it get to our heads. It's silly.
I wish more people thought like you.
Oh,
honestly.
Yeah. Well, if we set a good example, hopefully people will follow that. Right. I would love to see people overcoming their egos, where they don't have to put others down, or implicitly put others down by elevating themselves over other people. Yeah. Right. Like, we're all just humans. We're all here for a finite period of time, and then we're going to die. And we should try to do as much good as we can if we have the opportunity. But the reality is, as well, as not everyone has the opportunity. So we're so lucky and fortunate to be where we are, where we do have an opportunity. We're in a position of luxury where we can give back safely. Like, if I were living in poverty, I could talk about ideals all day long, but I just have to feed my family, and that's it. I can only focus on feeding my family. But the fact that I'm not in poverty means I have the luxury of thinking about things to make the world better. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and think that we're super amazing for doing this. We're lucky, but where luck meets hard work is where we need to be.
Yeah.
So
you are also working. You're also advising Hero Engine. I forgot the name.
World. Yeah, Hero Engine World. Yeah. So actually, this was a project I got on initially because, well, it seemed amazing and just so consistent with what we're doing with Zen and what's going on with seasteading. These guys are looking at using blockchain technology and kind of gaming technologies that they're experts in to do social good. And the angle that they're approaching is they want to use the technology for, like, the first use case is disaster management. Right. So you do a whole bunch of modeling and simulation to make sure the society is prepared for certain disasters. And you kind of war game this in like a decentralized way using your tech. And that's really cool. If you can make life better, where if a fire breaks out in a municipality and people aren't just kind of chaotically hurting into each other and harming others, that's great. I'd love to be part of that. But then actually meeting the CEO, Alex, just such a cool guy. And you just see that he's actually trying to make the world better. His values are aligned. And these are the projects. There's one other project I'm an advisor on. It's called Ethland, which does peer-to-peer lending on the Ethereum blockchain. And I'm part of that as well because the values are consistent. They're trying to provide financial services to people who don't have access to financial services. So it's like, you can see the kinds of things that I want to be part of, or trying to make the world better in different ways. And oftentimes there's good overlap, but sometimes they're just different. But I'm very fortunate to have these opportunities to be part of these projects.
Yeah, but each of the things you're involved with, Hero Engine World.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
ZenCash. And what's the name of the last one you mentioned?
Ethland.
Ethland.
Yeah, ETH land.
Oh,
like
yeah.
lending. Yeah.
They seem to have the four of them a common base.
Yes, exactly.
Let's do something about the world.
Yes, exactly.
I absolutely love it. So I think our time is running we are running out of time.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but I have a word game for you.
Okay, do it.
Okay, so I say something and you finish it, and we close the podcast with that.
Oh boy, this is dangerous. Okay.
So the first one is an easy one. I heart
Life?
we need to change the world one.
For the better?
Okay, that one.
Yeah.
Keep calm and
Zen on?
I like that one. I like
Me too, yeah.
Varyon. Oh, please.
Yeah.
Our Varyon.
Yes.
I spent some minutes talking about our Varyon. So.
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
What is the Varyon?
Yeah, so Varyon's going to be the cryptocurrency of the seasteads. So this would be kind of the base settlement layer for major transactions that happen on seasteads. So especially for buying infrastructure, you want to buy a property on a seastead, you want to pay for basic services on a seastead, it'll be in Varyon. So that would be kind of a settlement layer. So we'll see where it evolves. I'm really excited for it. I think it's an optimistic, or something to be optimistic about. And it's just starting right now, but this is kind of the entry point where if you're interested in Blue Frontiers, this is a great way to get into it.
Yes.
On the ground floor. And the benefit is, and the way I look at it is, you're also contributing to making this a reality. It's not just an investment or a speculation. It's you're actually contributing, being part of the community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to buy Varyon, for those who are listening to us, just visit varyon.io, varyon.io. We are working really hard every single day to get closer and closer and closer to the date of the ICO. We are right now in pre-sales. But yeah, visit varyon.io to get whitelisted. Why should someone buy Varyon, bro? Besides contributing to the community, making this happen, becoming part of the Blue Frontiers ecosystem, eventually being assisted. What else?
Well, I think you gave some great examples of why they should. And I can't give investment advice. So, as an honest academic, I can't say, hey, you're going to make $1 billion with Varyon, right? And we don't want to do that anyway. You don't want everyone to put their money all in one thing. But I think it's something that if you believe in what we're doing on the project and you think there's a good future, the management's doing well, the community is going to grow, and we're actually going to launch some seasteads, then of course this is a good way to get in now. It's kind of like you're a seed investor on something. But remember, as a seed investor, you have to do your own due diligence. And we're not here to shill this and say you're going to make $1 billion, right? But it's definitely something that I personally think is a very interesting opportunity.
What is seasteading for you?
The future? It's a culmination of values that I hold very dear, right? It's a culmination of figuring out a voluntary society, bringing peace and happiness to the world, and all of the fluffy things that we can talk about like hippies that people make fun of us on. But it's the truth, and we can actually. It's like our parents' generation were hippies, and they were just poor hippies. But now with cryptocurrencies, we can actually afford to make this stuff a reality, and we're going to create a more peaceful, happy, cleaner world.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I heard happy, clean worlds.
Me too.
Context, this heart
Me
thing
too.
was Rob Hearts.
Yeah. So what I'll say is, and maybe I'm ridiculously naive here, but we're at a point in history where we can actually make our values come true, and we can overturn all of the stupid stuff that happened in the 20th century and before that, of people doing horrible things to each other and forcing them to live in ways they don't want. It's unacceptable, and we can take a stand right here in this generation and actually be part of making a difference. So that's what we're doing here. With ZenCash, that's what we're doing in the Bitcoin ecosystem. That's what we're doing with Seasteading, Blue Frontiers. All right. So I urge anyone who's listening to this, you're obviously one huge step ahead of the pack here, but be active. come join the community and be part of this. I don't even want to say revolution. I would just say movement. Like we're not revolting against anything. We're just moving in a different direction.
Well, the original meaning of the word revolution was
spin around. Yeah, revolve around. Yeah.
So yes, we have a Telegram channel, by the way. That's one way of joining the community besides being, or additionally to buying Varyon.
Yeah.
Join, look for us on Blue Frontiers community. And I think, Rob, that now I will let you go, but it was super awesome to talk to you. It was
no, likewise, Natalie. It's always talking with you. But I'll also say, anyone that's interested in ZenCash should go to ZenCash.com and join any of our forums. We're all over the place, so you can join any discussion group that we're in. Please be part of it. Yeah.
Very well integrated. Well,
yes.
Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Natalie.
What time is there?
2 p.m.
Okay, nice. Well, have a nice afternoon.
Thank you. Alrighty.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for joining us on the Blue Frontiers podcast. To learn more about our work and find out how you can support the project, visit blue-frontiers.com or visit our social channels. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Blue Frontiers, or shoot us a note via our website. If you learned something and enjoyed the show, tell a friend or leave us a positive review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and remember to join us for the next episode. See you next time.